we're ready to introduce Coach Potter. Coach Potter grew up in Sedan, Kansas, where he was a basketball and baseball standout. He was recruited to play both sports at the collegiate level. He first attended Cali County Community College and then went on to finish his playing career at Kansas Newman College, where he earned a degree in secondary education. Mark became known from this point on as Coach Potter. After teaching and coaching at the high school level for 11 years, Mark took on the challenge to restart the men's basketball program of his alma mater, now called Newman University. Coach Potter was the head men's basketball coach at NCAA Division II Newman University for 19 years. He is the winningest basketball coach in Newman's history. In 2013, the basketball court was named the Potter Family Court. Coach Potter has been inducted in the Cali College Hall of Fame, the Newman University Hall of Fame, the Wichita Sports Hall of Fame, and the National Baseball Congress Hall of Fame. Wow. 3 years ago, Coach Potter left the coaching profession to become a keynote speaker. Mark felt a calling on his life to share his experiences as a coach and become an advocate for mental illness. Mark wants to share a message of hope in his battle with severe depression and his rise to victory in what he refers to as his national championship. Mark, we're thrilled to have you as our guest speaker today. Thank you.
Appreciate you. Thank you. Appreciate that. It is a pleasure being here this morning. My wife has already started the clock, so I've got to get right down to business here because she is going to speak for approximately 10 minutes at the tail end of this presentation. And I definitely want to give her that opportunity because we have found that her presentation, her side of it, is extremely important as well. But it's great to see some of my old friends and obviously meet the new president of Newman University and one of my former players sitting back there, and I told him, I said, you need to be sitting in the front row. And he said, no, Coach, I don't want to get your spit, especially in this day and age. So I don't think, Eric, you were on the brunt end of any of my halftime just. Well, I'm thankful to be here today to speak to the Catholic Assembly of Business, but I've had the privilege of working in the Catholic school systems for 24 years, 19 of those at Newman University, 5 more of those at Cape and Mount Carmel. And then, of course, I went to Newman University for 4 years as well, so I've been in the Catholic school system for a long time. We have never lived in a more stressful time, as we all know. So I do believe that my story is needed now more than ever before. Today, it is our hope that through telling our journey, a little bit about our journey with anxiety and severe depression, that we can help you guys recognize some of the signs and some of the symptoms. And most importantly for my wife and I is we want to give you permission to do something about it. I often look back on that and I always wish somebody would have given me permission prior to the point in time in which my wife forced me to go get help. In January of 2018, the projected starting quarterback for the Washington State University football team died by suicide. His name is Tyler Helinski. His number was 3. And the reason I know that is because his mother and father have since started a nonprofit organization called Helinski's Hope. And what they're trying to accomplish with Helinski's Hope is to keep Tyler's name alive and his memories alive. And they're also trying to destigmatize mental illness because, see, there was 0 signs that young man was going to take his life. 0. And many times there are signs and symptoms that we can see and that we observe. But in his case, there were none. Tyler was a young man that looked like on the outside he had everything going for him. And yet on the inside, something totally different was going on. Man, can I relate to that? That particular season as I approached coaching back, and it was my 19th year of coaching basketball, being a head coach, but it was my 9th or 10th year at Newman University. All of a sudden, something was different. The last thing I wanted to do was let anybody know that I was having issues. That was where Tyler Helinski was. And unfortunately, and I will get emotional as I speak this morning, so bear with me, but unfortunately, Tyler Helinski didn't talk to somebody about it. Unfortunately, he decided to take his own life. The stigma that is attached to mental health must be shattered. It's time that we shatter the stigma. The stigma is a lie, and it's one that we all continue to be a part of. My hand is up. I'm not pointing my finger. It's pointing right back here. 3 years ago, when we decided to get out of the education world and get into the speaking world, we decided we wanted to make an impact on a daily basis if possible. It has been a phenomenal journey that my wife and I have been on. A challenging one at times, but a phenomenal one. And we are blessed to have the opportunity, and we are thankful to be here this morning. Depression is deadly. So how do we change the mindset of any and everybody in regards to how we observe people with a mental illness? How do we do that? How do we change the insanity of what mental illness is all about? That's kind of a weird word when I use it with mental illness, but I love using that word because, we're going to do the same thing over and over again, and we're going to expect a different outcome, right? Well, how's that been working for us? Not very well. So we've got to figure out a way to make some changes. One of those ways is that I want to encourage all of you, and each person sitting in this room today, in some form or another, has had an experience with a mental health issue. Whether it be you personally, somebody in your family, or a close friend of yours. We have all had the experience. Statistics say 1 in every 4 people in the United States in any given year will go through some type of mental illness issue or have some type of mental illness issue, whether that be anxiety, severe depression, on and on and on with different things that could take place. One of the things that I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that can change the trajectory of where we are going in our thought process with mental illness is that you start telling your story. I hope you're hearing me here because, see, not everybody is like me. They get up in front of people and they just, pour their heart out and tell everything about their own personal journey with severe depression. I wouldn't expect it to be that way. Matter of fact, I didn't expect it to be here today. That was not the game plan, I can assure you of that. The game plan when I was going through depression was to make sure nobody finds out and to make sure that we keep this under the carpet and only let 3 or 4 people know at Newman University so that when I came back to my team, nobody knew where I was. I'm going to go back to coaching. We're going to put that in the rearview mirror and we're going to go on with life. Because I didn't want somebody to think that Coach Potter couldn't handle his daily duties. I was a husband, a father, a head coach. I was extremely ashamed. And then one day, when I went back to my team, I decided to tell them everything. I felt like I owed it to my team. I missed 8 games and 28 practices. Now, I played 2 sports for 4 years in college. I played 3 sports in high school. I played 14 straight years in the National Baseball Congress tournament. I played 500 to 700 fast pitch softball games when I was young. Never missed a game ever. All of those games. The severe depression took me out of doing exactly what I love to do, and that was to be a head coach. I missed 8 games and 28 practices. But I decided I needed to tell my team because I felt like I owed it to them since I wasn't with them for that amount of time. And that changed my life. The day that I actually told somebody besides my own personal family. And so here's my hope for you. Here's my prayer for you. That you will understand that when I say, hey, share your story, whatever that may be, share your story with your family. Make sure that your children know if you have struggled. Make sure that your grandchildren know that if you have struggled. Because if they know you've struggled, they're going to know when they start to struggle a little bit that it's okay to struggle. What's not okay is to not do something about it. And that's where we are in our society today. We all have struggles, but man, we're going to hide it. My hands up high on that one. I was going to be that same way. We have a famous football coach in the state of Kansas who just retired from Kansas State University a couple years ago. His name's Coach Bill Snyder. What most people don't know about Coach Bill Snyder is he had a 22-year-old grandson that died by suicide. We had a 5th grade student in the Wichita area a year and a half ago that took their life. This is alarming. Obviously, it's alarming to all of us. The second leading cause of death, I want you to hear this stat. I don't give a lot of them, but I want you to hear this stat. The second leading cause of death in the United States for 10 to 44-year-olds is death by suicide. 10 to 44. Any age, obviously it's heartbreaking. But when you go all the way down to 10, and unfortunately that number has been lowering, and especially with the pandemic that has hit. Obviously, COVID-19 has changed everything in the last few months. This is the first time my wife and I have been talking to somebody in person since February. Man, is it great to be out again, right? But we have stay-at-home orders, school and meetings online, all the unpredictability of whether we're going to stay in school, whether we're not going to stay in school now. Many jobs lost. People still working at their jobs, risking their lives. And thank you to those people that are doing that. I know a firefighter sitting in here today, and probably many other people that I don't know about that are working with people on a daily basis and risking their own lives. So thank you for that. The homeschooling, homeschooling for somebody that's used to homeschooling is not a big deal, but somebody that's not used to homeschooling, I can imagine what they went through and what they might potentially be going through as we start the new school year, depending on the situation. But everything's out of our control. So quickly, I want to tell you a quick strategy to do. And this is a strategy that I used in coaching, that I used for many different things. But one of my biggest weaknesses as a coach was I wasn't able to get rid of the things in my brain that made me worry a lot. So you can imagine whatever your job is, all the things that you worry about, right? We worry. It's human nature to worry. Well, how do you understand when it's time to stop worrying and make sure that you do away with things that you cannot control and then start to worry, or really basically we want you to do something about it, like take action on things that you can control. And so you take 3 days, and here's what I want you to do. If you've never done this exercise before, take 3 days. At the end of the day, write down all of your worries, everything that you can remember that you worried about. You write them down. And if you don't write them down, you won't be able to change the course of how you think. That's why you have to write them down or put them in your phone, however you want to do that. And the reason you do that is because then when you go down that list after those 3 evenings and you look at that entire list of things that you've written down that you've worried about, probably about 90% of those things are going to be what we call irrational thoughts. They are things that you cannot control, but you're still worrying about. And so then you have to, once you recognize that, then you become intentional about saying, wait a second, there I go. I'm starting to worry about that problem again. Can I control it or can I not control it? If I can't control it, boom, give yourself permission to stop thinking about it. It's a small strategy that has really done wonders in my own personal life. Suicide hotline calls since the pandemic started, are up 891%. Obviously, people are struggling. Domestic violence right here in the Wichita area in the very first 3 weeks that COVID-19 hit, there were 3 murder-suicides in the first 3 weeks, and I don't have statistics since then, but obviously we've had some major issues happen since that point in time. Alcohol sales have risen 54% in our area. So people are starting to self-medicate at a level that they never have in the past. Drugs, on and on and on. It's alarming. While I personally suffered from severe depression, probably genetic in origin, there is such a thing in what we call situational depression. And many people that have had job losses or anything that they've struggled with in the recent months, there's probably been a lot of situational depression because of COVID-19. So all those statistics that we just talked about, or some of them, a few that we talked about, point to the fact that it's obviously COVID-19 is creating big problems with our mental health and our society. So today I hope you will find some strength in the story that I'm getting ready to tell you. And that if anything resonates with you at all, that you will not hesitate to step forward and get help. Whether that be for you, for a family member, for a spouse, whoever that may be. We want to give you permission. I know one thing. It feels really good to feel good. There is hope. We in this day and age are looking for hope, are we not? We are looking for hope. God is still in control. I have an excerpt here from an actual suicide note. The note was long. It was 16 pages long. But I just received one page from a great friend of mine. It happened to be his junior college baseball coach. Matter of fact, this man was a coach in the state of Kansas back in the 80s. He was married and he had 7 children. And he wrote a 16-page suicide note, and unfortunately, he took his life. Why do I tell you that? Because it's relative to one of the things that he wrote in that suicide note. It's a paragraph, and I want to read this paragraph to you that this man wrote. He titled the paragraph, "It Hurts," H-U-R-T-S, "It Hurts." And here's what the man had to say. It is amazing that society cannot spot the affirmed and the ill. Lord, help me. Lord, help others similarly affected. There are lots of other people who need help. And then he said, society, wake up. He wrote that note over 30 years ago. Have we awoken? Has our society awoken in regards to mental health? I think we all know the answer is, man, we've got a long ways to go. Powerful words from a man that was struggling, a man that taught psychology, that understood the brain probably more than most of us. On the rest of that page that I received, there were just words all over the rest of the page. And I want to quickly, is it up? I'm just going to quickly read these signs and symptoms. These are signs and symptoms that he was feeling as he was going through the depths of depression. But they're not exactly identical to this, but just listen to his words. Sadness, fatigue, underactivity, no appetite, anguish, disinterest, low energy, hopeless, no concentration, passive, worthless, helpless, isolation, low self-esteem, head down, biochemical. When the doctors told me that I had to take medication because I had the serotonin level in my brain was starting to drop, I had a chemical imbalance in my brain, and the medication would help bring it back to where it needed to be, that was a relief to me because I had no understanding of what mental health issues were all about. Didn't know medication could help it, didn't understand anything about it, basically. These words are obviously all relatable to me. Every one of those signs and symptoms that you see up there and that I just read, I can relate to every one of those signs and symptoms. It was 15 years ago now. My wife and I have been on a mission for 15 years to try to get the word out. And I'm going to tell you the story just briefly here of what went down that particular season. As I said earlier, I was in my 19th year as a head coach. The year before, we had won 25 games, had been in the national tournament, had been ranked in the top 20. I really didn't have anything to be depressed over if you wanted to look at my life and say, oh my goodness, Coach Potter's married to his high school sweetheart. He has 2 wonderful children. He wins basketball games. Everybody looking on the outside thought I had it all going on for me. And I, just like Tyler Helinski, I was so miserable. And I didn't know what to do about it because I was in a position where I was supposed to be in control. There are expectations that we have in our society, are there not? It took me 6 weeks from the time that official practice started up until the time that the first official game was there to truly go from being the normal Coach Mark Potter to somebody that was spiraling out of control with my thoughts. I remember the very first time that I knew something wasn't right, that I was driving into Wichita from Cheney. My wife and I live in Cheney, so I had a 30-minute drive every day. And I remember the very first day that I thought something wasn't correct. I had tears running down my face a little bit as I was driving in. I was emotional. I'd lost my confidence. I was thinking, why am I feeling this uneasy feeling about what I'm getting ready to do? I've done this for a long time. I wondered what was going on with my mind. Why would I feel that way? Why the insecurity? Why the lack of confidence? I didn't have an answer, but I just knew something wasn't correct. And as I remember walking into practice, and I did this a lot of days leading up to the day where the doctors told me that I had to stay home for a while to get better. But the very first day that I walked into that practice that particular week, I remember thinking to myself, gosh, I got to figure out a way to make sure nobody else knows that I'm miserable right now. Because I was truly miserable. And so the only way I can describe it is I faked it for 2 hours every day. I knew I had to get the team ready to go for the season. And I would fake it for 2 hours, and then I would walk out of the gym up to the second floor to where my office was, and I would close my door, and I'd put my head on my desk, and I would just cry. It's not an easy thing for me to tell you sometimes, because I'm supposed to be in control, right? Isn't that what people in our position do? We're supposed to be in control. I was far from in control with my emotions and with my thoughts. As we approached the first part of the season, we approached the first regular season game, I remember the week before, and I literally lost almost 30 pounds in that 6-week period leading up to the first game. I could not eat. Normally during the season, I slept for 4 hours approximately a night. I was sleeping more hours than I'd ever slept in my entire life. My body was starting to shut down. And I remember driving from Cheney into Newman University and thinking to myself, I can't get this cloud out from over my head. maybe I ought to just drive my car off the road into that telephone pole doing 100 mile an hour and just do away with this. Those were the thoughts that I was starting to have. So I had started to have suicidal thoughts. My wife was starting to see signs of me at the house that she had never seen before. I would be sitting in my chair with tears rolling down my face, and she would say, what is going on? And I would say, I'm not really sure, I'll be fine. And I was not going to tell her what was really happening with me. This is my wife that I started calling in 7th grade. She was an 8th grader. I was going after an older woman. This is the woman I've been married to now for 37 years, and I wasn't going to tell her what was going on. A little bit of insanity in that, is there not? Somebody that you know loves you unconditionally, and still that stigma says, don't you tell him, don't you tell him. Keep it from her, keep it from your family, keep it from your players, keep it from your coaches, keep it from everybody. Finally, to follow up on the crying thing, my wife had seen me cry one time in all of the years leading up to that. And now all of a sudden she's seeing me cry in my chair. And finally, we were the Saturday before the first regular season game, and my wife sees me in my chair, and she says, are you okay? And then I stand up and I go over to the sink. Every season we would bring my team out to Cheney, and we would practice at the local high school on that Saturday before the regular season started. And then we would take them out to the DeMario's, the pizza place, which is combined with a bowling alley, if any of you guys have ever been out there, and we would kind of have a team bonding activity. We did it every year. And so my role as a head coach was to talk trash to my players and let them know nobody's going to beat me on the bowling alley, and that if they did beat me, I'd run sprints for them or something like that. So just as a side note, 19 years, none of my players ever beat me in the bowling, ever. Eric knows what I used to do in PE all the time, right? Like, I always give them a straight A if they could beat me in any type of individual sport. And Eric, you couldn't beat me in anything, by the way. But that Saturday was kind of the pivotal day in regards to changing my life. Because my wife says, do you need me to take you to practice? Because I was struggling. Tears and just... I looked a mess. I'd lost a lot of weight. And I figured out a way again, and no, I think I've got this. She knows obviously something's majorly wrong, but she is not. We still have not talked about it. I figure out a way to go to practice, fake it again. We go to the bowling alley. I lie to my team. I tell them, listen, guys, I can't bowl today. I have a back problem. In all actuality, I was severely depressed, and I needed some help. I ate about 2 pieces of pizza and kind of looked around and went and threw it in the trash, and I went home that day. And that evening, I had to go to Sterling College because in those days, if you could go watch them live, that's what you did. And from Cheney, it was about an hour and 15-minute drive. And literally that entire afternoon, I was just laying in my chair trying to gather myself, just trying to survive. And my wife says, do you need me to take you to Sterling? And I finally said, I think I do need you to take me. It is the very first time that that was my way of reaching out to my wife. The very first time. So let me qualify something first. My wife never went with me to either recruit or to scout another team, unless there was a nice big shopping mall somewhere close by, right? And then she would drop me off and go shop and come back. This particular night, and if you've ever been to Sterling, Kansas, you know there's not a big shopping mall in Sterling, Kansas. So she was going for a different reason this time, and that was to protect her husband somehow, some way. We get there, she sees somebody she knows. The last thing I wanted to do was to talk to anybody. Anybody that knows me knows that I am a people person. I love talking to people. I enjoy a conversation. When I was going through severe depression, I was a recluse. I did not want to speak to anybody. When I wasn't on the basketball court, I went into my office and I closed my door so I didn't have to see anybody. That was the way it rolled. I had zero confidence in even carrying on a conversation. My wife says, I got somebody over here I want you to meet. We get to Sterling College. She takes me over there. I meet the man. And supposedly I shook his hand and didn't say a word. One of the things you learn when you're in severe depression and you're severely depressed is that sometimes your mind is a little bit skewed as to what happened. I had no idea. I didn't say a word in that conversation. I don't remember that. Of course she does. She was really upset with me that I didn't talk in that conversation. And she was kind of getting after me pretty good after the conversation was over. And you can imagine that just put me into, not her fault, but again, the situation itself continued to make me plummet more into severe depression. Because now I'm disappointing my wife. And she finally decided enough is enough, and she said, okay, I'm going to get a doctor's appointment. And on Monday she came to me and she said, all right, I've moved heaven and earth, and I've got a doctor's appointment at 1 o'clock today. This was the day before our opening game of that season, and she said, we're going to go see the doctor. We're going to take care of this problem. We're going to attack this problem. And after all the issues that I just described to you, I looked at my wife and I said, I'm not going, and you can't make me. Well, at the doctor's office at 1 o'clock that day, they said, Coach, you're severely depressed. We're going to put you on medication. It's going to take 4 to 6 weeks before it fully kicks in. So you're going to have to be patient. We will assess you 1 week at a time. You will see a therapist once a week until we release you to go back to your team. And so for the first 3 weeks, I was at home. I didn't turn on a television. I didn't read the paper. I didn't turn on a computer. I didn't turn on a phone. I didn't answer the phone. I did absolutely nothing. I tried to eat when I could, and I slept. I was so far gone. I was actually relieved when they told me I couldn't coach my team. That's a strange statement coming from somebody like me. I mean, we're talking about opening game of a season. All right, there's 2 times in a season that you don't want to miss. One would be the opening game, and then the obviously postseason, which is what you play for. I finally the medication started to kick in, and I started to get a little bit better. And I decided I was going to check my emails. And so I went in after about 3 weeks, and I opened up my emails, which, oh my goodness, there were a lot of emails. I hadn't checked it in a long time. But there was one email that just jumped out at me. It was from Jeffrey Parson. He was the sports writer at the Wichita Eagle. He was the one that covered our team. He said, hey, Coach Potter, I want to be the first one to talk to you about why you haven't been with your team when you get back with your team. And so I hit reply real quick, and I said, I'm not talking to you or anybody else, and I sent it. I always kind of jokingly say, I was probably well enough to be checking my emails, but probably not well enough to be responding yet. That's the way it was going to be. Rear view mirror, that's going to be behind us. Boom, done deal. I get better. Finally, they release me after missing 8 games and 28 practices. And I get back with my team. As I told you earlier, I talked to my team about it. I decided I owed that to them. And we were in the vans on our way to Washburn University to play them. And we always had a policy. If we had a freshman, they set up with the head coach or whoever was driving, one of the coaches that was driving. And so I had Dan Hann, a freshman from Phoenix, Arizona, up in the front seat with me. And we were just conversating, and that's not a word my wife tells me, but does everybody understand what I mean when I say conversate? She's like, don't use that word. I said, I'm from Sedan, Kansas. I get to use that word. Conversate, right? But we were just having a conversation. And we were talking about life and talking about this, talking about that. And he just literally, the freshman interrupts me in the middle of a sentence and said, Coach, hey, you remember when you told us about that reporter that called you, that emailed you? I said, yeah, I remember. He said, I think it'd be pretty cool if you'd talk to him. I looked at that freshman. I was thinking, now I got a freshman telling me what to do. But that comment truly bothered me. emotions always come out on this one. We drove the rest of the way and we played the game, and I got back home and I went and talked to my wife. I said, you know, one of my freshmen said that he thinks it'd be pretty cool if we talked to him. And so my wife and I discussed it, we prayed about it, and we decided it was the right thing to do. You don't think God put that freshman in that seat that day? You don't think God didn't speak through that young man to me that day? You know, we're the ones teaching them, or they're the ones teaching us, right? You know why that young man said what he did? He had already been through depression. He got it. He understood it. He knew what it looked like, and he also knew that if his coach would say something publicly, that it could truly impact a lot of other people. And so I called up Jeffrey Parson, and he came and interviewed me. He put the article in the paper on a Sunday, and we estimate that we were contacted over 400 people in the next 48 hours, over 400 contacts of some kind. People just from all over. Most of the people, we didn't even know who they were. And I think about, my goodness, would I have eventually opened up and talked about this really difficult subject if it hadn't been for that freshman? God works in unbelievable ways. Now, I know, honey, you're nervous right now. She's like, oh my gosh, they've got to be out of here at 8:45, and now I only have 7 minutes to speak. So I'm in trouble, but I am going to quickly introduce my wife, and she will do her best to get done in approximately 7 or 8 minutes. And we do want to ask, give time for questions and answers, but listen to me. Anybody that does have time or wants to have time, we will stick around as long as we need to talk to you today. We will give you all of our information. A little bit hurried. I feel a little bit hurried today, but I want to introduce my wife of 37 years, who's been there through all the great, through all the ugly, everything in between. I always call her my first team all-world MVP wife. Please welcome my wife to the stand. 36 years.
36 years. It just feels like 37. It's kind of scary, really. I kept thinking 37, so I'm back there adding it up. I'm like, did I miss a year somehow? So I added it all up. Anyway, it's not. Yeah, what's the difference? Okay. Yes, he was supposed to be done at 8:20. He told me I for sure will, so I'll give you time. Well, it's 8:30, so I'm going to go really fast. I'm a career teacher. I taught for 32 years. If you can imagine how many in-services I've been in that talked about mental health, you can't even imagine, because we would have 10 in-service days a year. So think about that. I've been very well trained on how to recognize the signs and symptoms of mental health and mental illness, and yet when it's living in my own house, I didn't recognize it. You see, I'm also a career coach's wife. We actually have a sign in our bedroom that says, we interrupt this marriage to bring you basketball season. And that was so true. He was so involved with his team and winning games and on the road and then recruiting that I was used to him being a little bit disengaged. So it took me a while to figure it all out. What he doesn't tell you was that on that car ride to Sterling that day, he reclined the seat. He laid all the way down, all the way there, tears rolling down his face, and he just was begging me, you've got to do something because I can't live like this. You're going to have to help me because I can't do this. That's the day when that definition of insanity was going through my head. I can just do the same thing over and over and expect him to get better, or I can actually do something. And I decided I am going to act. So Sunday afternoon, I used the back of my insurance card. I called the behavioral health number. I got the number of every single mental health facility that took our insurance. I called the athletic director, I called the assistant coaches, I tried and tried and tried. I was doing everything in my power to figure out what to do next. I left a message at the doctor's office. You guys all know Dr. Keller, right? I left a message with Dr. Keller, and I was crying, and I said, I need you to call me, and you got to call me soon. I know first thing in the morning, I need help, and I need help now. So on Monday morning, I didn't know if I should even leave him. But I got up and I went to school. I was teaching second grade at the time, so I had 27-year-olds. I knew I had art that morning, and my kids were going to be gone for a little while. So I knew that I could make some phone calls. I talked to my principal, I wrote lesson plans, I got a doctor's appointment, I got a counseling appointment. I feel like I have moved heaven and earth. And when I got home, and I looked at him, and I said, he was reclined in his recliner, he was tearful. And I said, we're going to go to the doctor today, and we're going to go to the counselor, and we're going to fix this. I'm going to go with you, and we're going to get this stopped. And he looked up and he said, I'm not going, and you can't make me. And I'm just going to tell you, that made me really mad. Now, Mark's assistant coach was about 6'8", weighed about 280-ish, and I might be undershooting the number a little bit. But his face came across in my mind. And I looked at Mark and I said, you're going to get up and you're going to walk to the car. Because if you don't get up and walk to that car, I'm going to call Chris and he's going to pick you up and he's going to shove you in the car. So you can get shoved in the car or you can walk to the car. I don't care how you go, but you're getting in that car. And he put his hands up like this and he said, yeah, I'll walk. I said, that's a great decision. I went to the counselor with him. I knew that the wrong thing that I could do, I'm not suggesting that everybody yell at their husband, but I knew that the wrong thing I could do was to do nothing. And so I was not going to do that any longer. The next few weeks were very trying. I was trying to manage the basketball team. I was trying to manage the assistant coaches who were now coaching full-time. I was trying to keep in contact. The nuns at Newman, they prayed every day. They met, and they prayed every day. They wrote me a note almost every day to tell me that they had prayed. I have a blanket that they stitched, and every stitch is a prayer. And I'll keep that blanket forever. When Mark got better, he's never been in severe depression. Again, he continues to take medication. We continue, if we need to go talk to a counselor, we're going to go do that. We're going to make sure we're going to take care of what we need to take care of. Now, I will tell you that when Mark told me we were going to quit our jobs and we were going to go talk to people about mental illness, I knew I had to start watching him because he probably needed more medication. That's kind of a strange thing to do. But I'm going to also tell you that I've seen the impact. I want to read something to you. This is a message that I received. I get a message almost every time we go. I was calling to thank Coach Potter for presenting at my university a while back and opening my eyes to my mental health issues. Without his speech, I probably would not be alive today. So I just want to reach out and explain the impact that it had on my life. This was written by a volleyball athlete. The trainer told us that she had her suicide planned. She was ready to take her life. But after we spoke, she was able to find the courage to confide in her parents. She realized she wasn't by herself. Other people felt that way. Her parents contacted the trainers, and they addressed the problem. I've used that everywhere we speak. If we are in California, I've used that example. If we are in Florida, I've used that example. That was written by a volleyball athlete at Newman University here in Wichita, Kansas. What I want when we leave here today, all I want is for people to not only have a different mindset about mental illness, but I want you to act differently. I feel like people like us have to get in the game. People like you that are managers, people like you, just ask questions, find out, be there. I know we have to be everywhere. We want to go to every high school. We want to go to every business. We want to go everywhere to start conversations that are sometimes hard to start. So today, I'm going to let Mark finish up. We will take questions, and we will be here as long as you need. We went to one high school. We got done at 10 a.m. We were there until 3:30. There were so many kids lined up. So we'll be here as long as you need us. So here's Mark.
Give her a huge hand. She's not as tough as she sounds, just so you'll know. Actually, sometimes she is. Kind of have to be when you live with me, I guess. I want to finish up today by giving you a quote from a lawyer's wife, a lawyer that unfortunately took his life. And his wife was quoted, and her name was Joanna Litt. And this is what she's had to say about her husband and the situation that he was in. She said, he worked in a culture where it is shameful to ask for help, shameful to be vulnerable, and shameful not to be perfect. And I thought to myself, that's the culture I work in. Not at Newman I'm talking about the athletic world now. Like that's our world. A culture of, man, show your toughness, don't you show any weakness. There is strength in getting help. It is not weakness. You wouldn't believe how many coaches have approached me in the last 15 years saying, Coach, I need to talk to you. Oh my goodness, there's issues all over the world, all over the United States. We get contacted from anybody from Wichita all the way from overseas about somebody that says, man, I just need to talk to somebody that maybe they would understand what I've gone through. That's why I want to encourage you to share your story. So the question that I would ask to finalize our presentation today would be this. If you knew that you could speak to somebody and change or save their lives, would you? Well, I know you would. That's an easy answer, isn't it? But you have to be intentional about it because it's not always comfortable. Like you got to we always talk about get out of your comfort zone, right? Well, you got to get out of your comfort zone if you're going to talk about mental health. If you're going to talk to somebody in your family or a friend or somebody in your class or whatever it may be. And then you can truly impact because they'll understand that, no matter whether we're a head coach at the college level or whether we're a business person in the real business world or the president of Newman University, doesn't matter where we are or where we come from. They need to know that we are human. And when they find out we're human beings, then they'll understand, you know what? It's a lot. You've given them immediate permission to go get help. You guys have been incredible today. I put the final slide up. I sped the process up just a little bit. This is all of our information up here. We invite you to reach out to us anytime, whether that be today or 3 years from now. We get phone calls from students that we've spoken to a year after the fact sometimes, and we love that. Like we're simply here to impact. And so please take our information down. Feel free to go on our pages and like them. Obviously, in this day and age, social media is important. And so feel free to go on our pages and like them and follow us, and I promise you I'll follow you back if indeed you want us to.